Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Farmer, and this is the Evolution of a Movie show. And I am not alone. I am joined by the Hans and Simon of the series, folks. It's James Shippey and Andy Rossi. How are you guys doing this morning? Morning for us, anyways.
I'm doing great. How are you, Jack?
I'm doing pretty good. James, how are you?
I'm doing great. Maintenance men are in and out of the house today. So
As
you
a
might see
dad.
people walking behind me.
How
Ladders,
are you as a dad?
caulking guns. As a dad, I am happy. I am sleep deprived, and I'm here and ready to shoot and score.
Have you used any of the parenting tips you learned from 300 last week? Has your kid killed any giant wolves yet?
No, he hasn't. But when he's ready to do that, I will be right behind him, cheering him on, because he's got more cojones than his pops. Okay.
Without spoiling what the movie is that we're about to watch, even though I guess everyone knows because it's in the title, did you guys get the reference, Hans and Simon?
Well, we got Hans from the first one, from Die Hard 1. Simon
Says,
what's the second one?
The third one.
The third one. Die Hard with Vengeance.
They were both Grubers.
Oh, yeah.
So this is how the show works. What we do is we watch movies and then we talk about them, but we call it the evolution of movies because every single week we watch a movie that came out 1 year after the last movie we watched. So we started in 1990, then went to 91, 92, 93. Now we are all the way up in the year 2007. That means next week's 2008. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the here and now. Let's talk about 2007, a time when movies were all about how cool your ride was, whether it was Transformers, Death Proof, or, of course, Wild Hogs. But we aren't talking about any of those. We're talking about the return of John McClane in Live Free or Die Hard, a movie Roger Ebert gave 3 stars to, and IMDb described as John McClane and a young hacker join forces to take down a master cyber terrorist, Thomas Gabriel, in Washington, D.C. James, I want to start with you. Had you seen this movie before we watched it this week? And whether you had or haven't, what were your thoughts going into it this time around?
Yeah, I saw it. I'm trying to think. I either saw it. I don't think I went to the theater to see it. I saw it on HBO or one of those back when it came out. I seen it only once. I mean, obviously, anyone, any 80s baby, loves Die Hard, the original one. I mean, the premise is great. He's, taking on all these terrorists barefoot. He's not like Schwarzenegger or Van Damme. He doesn't have like these great fighting skills. He's like the everyman, and it's put you in a situation. What would I do in this situation? And of course, Die Hard with Vengeance with the great Samuel L. Jackson is my personal favorite. But yeah, I thought this one was good. It kind of was what I remember, but I'll be honest, the time I did see it, I didn't finish it the first time. So this was the first time I saw it. And, and you say as a dad, basically, it took me like about 5-6 hours to watch it last night because I was falling asleep every 20 minutes. I'm so sleep deprived. But other than that, it's a good movie. It's solid action. It's literally like action for like 2 hours straight. Which is unlike any of the other movies. There's not even much of a build-up. It just goes straight for it.
Yeah, that's what I said. I thought it's just the quintessential action movie. Andy, one of the things, and this kind of alludes to what James was saying earlier, one of the things I love about John McClane as opposed to a lot of other action heroes, especially when you go back to the 80s, is, other action heroes, they run out in the middle of the field, they shoot at bad guys, and bad guys just can't hit them for some reason. John McClane is a guy who just gets beaten up the whole movie and somehow comes out on top. Probably the most beat down action hero that you're going to find. How did you feel jumping into the 4th installment of a series and not watching the other ones for the show?
Yeah, it's funny because I watched this fairly recently because I just showed my wife. She just saw the first Die Hard for like the first time last Christmas, which of course Die Hard is of course a Christmas movie.
Yes.
So after I showed her the original, she said, I really like the Live Free or Die Hard one. So we watched it. So I was actually like fairly familiar with it this time around. But I feel like now I'm like, I only know the original and this one, the two in between, I don't really remember that well. So just going from the original to this one is insane, because the first one is just him. He's like a guy just trapped in the building. And this one, it's just like, I mean, we'll get there, but there is a lot of explosions, a lot of chase scenes. I feel like, as James always says, the hold my beer line, but Len Wiseman said, oh, you want explosions? You want hackers? Hold my beer.
Yeah, this one. So as far as the series goes, 1 is great. 3 is great. I think this one's great. Number 2, I wasn't a huge fan of, and I never saw the 5th one. But this one, I picked this movie because I remember seeing it in theaters, and I left with the biggest smile on my face. It was just so over the top throughout the whole way. It was like there was zero filter throughout the entire movie. If someone said, hey, what if they did this? They just thought, okay, let's do that.
Do it.
And it was, you definitely have to check your, is that realistic thought process at the door? Leave it and don't bring it along, and just go.
Even right in the opening credits, you got to say that, because even like the Fox logo, doesn't that get like hacked into? They like show the Fox logo. It's like
very 2007 in every way. It really kind of fits what we do with this show, because it does feel like a slice of 2007. But before we get into all the nitty gritty details, I always want to take a second to thank everyone who listens, thank everyone who watches, and thank everyone who leaves a comment, subscribes, shares with their friends, hits the like button, 5-star reviews, all that good stuff. It's always appreciated and helps us grow the show. Yippee-ki-yay, right, fellas?
Yes.
Great line.
Someone has to say it, but let's start talking about this movie. A bunch of hacking is going on, and the government eventually gets hacked. Meanwhile, John McClane interrupts his daughter while she's on a date, and he can't seem to understand why she doesn't want to see him or why she still uses his ex-wife's last name. John gets the call to go pick up Justin Long. I'm sure there's an Apple commercial joke in there somewhere, but someone is trying to get him to blow up, but fails because John shows up. After some John between each other, people start trying to shoot them both, and we get our first gunfight. He shoots a fire extinguisher, and due to a falling toy, blows up the entire building, and the duo escapes. James, this is the setup. Tell us about this world and these characters that we're about to go for a ride on.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, the stuff when they have McClane interrupt his daughter's date, you know where this is going. Number one, this is feeding the red meat to any diehard fan crowd. Basically, the stuff they get it right out the way that he has this tumultuous relationship with his daughter, and that she doesn't use her last name the way his wife didn't use her last name in the first Die Hard. They're estranged, but not because he's a bad father, quote unquote. It's just because he's so dedicated to his job and saving the world that there's a price to pay, right? So right away, this puts us on his side. Obviously, you know, we're already there, and then there's some funny banter with the boyfriend, not boyfriend guy. This is good stuff, but it makes you sentimental towards him because, like I said, the daughter's not giving him time of day, and we know he's a hero. Right. And they jump straight to it. In most movies, you know, I think they blow up some hackers in the first, 3 minutes. I mean, they didn't even, look, don't take a bathroom break, when this thing's on. Like, they're already killing people. And the thing is, I love how they ignore the rules of 3, because I'm thinking, okay, to kill these hackers, they're going to kill one more hacker, and then they'll get to Justin Long. They're like, no, we're going straight to Justin Long after that. Right. And it's just good. I think that sequence in the house, whenever I think of the trailer from Live Free or Die Hard, I always think of that whole action sequence when he goes to his apartment and fighting those guys in the apartment with the guns and the snipers and all that stuff. And with that quintessential scene when he throws the fire extinguisher and it blows up like C4, which I'm still curious, can that happen? Right?
I have a feeling no, but
let's try it.
It works.
Yeah. Exactly. But I just love that. And just to close that out, the thing is with this movie, you learn in the first 15, 20 minutes that it's not like the other Die Hard films in a sense where it's it's almost like McClane. It's almost like he's a superhero. I mean, people are getting blown to walls and still getting back up, and people bouncing off of buildings, and like, oh, okay, it's just a broken ankle. I can still run. It's like almost like a superhero movie almost. It's defying all the laws of gravity and human ability in these first 20 minutes to let you know what kind of movie we're in for.
Yeah, it's you make a lot of good points there. He's almost like a Wolverine in the sense that he's just going to take a beating and keep on ticking. Now, Andy, I want to ask you, because we talk about James hit on something very cool here about how just like his ex-wife in previous movies goes by her last name, so does his daughter. And not to give away the movie, but a lot of this hinges on the fact that John McClane needs to save his daughter, similar to in previous movies, he has to save his wife, etc. Do you like that there's sort of what I would call like echoes of previous movies in these sequels, or do you think that's just too derivative and repetitive and they need to figure something else out? How do you feel about those things?
I think you need to have some of that, or it's not Die Hard. If they didn't have any of that, it would just be another action movie with Bruce Willis, which I'm sure there's thousands out there that he's done. So having like the relationship with the daughter, I can't believe the boyfriend got out of there kind of scot-free. I was waiting for him to make like an appearance later and Bruce just wailing on him, but we never get to see that. I feel like this is like, Jack, you mentioned The Net like a few weeks back. This reminds me of like, this is like the end of that era of the hacker movies. Cause like, I loved it because they talk about hacking, and every time you can't really make hacking look cool. It's always just like music. And then they're like on a keyboard typing really fast. I'm like, oh, he must be good. And I think Justin Long is like a great character for that. But I think it's funny, like, that you put Bruce Willis in this world, because I know nothing about hacking. So like to put Bruce Willis, who's like, me or us, the audience, you're kind of like, oh, he's figuring it out too. I don't feel so stupid now because John McClane feels the same way. I don't know about hacking, but I feel like they really took all that hacking that was going on in like the 90s and I feel like this had to be one of the last movies that like hacking was kind of like the main thing, because they really went all in for it. And I do need to talk about one more character. So Justin Long, I thought was great. And this John McClane was great. The daughter was great. But I called this guy Evil Chris Martin, the sharpshooter guy. Do you remember this guy?
Oh, yes. Yes.
So he's an actor in one of my favorite movies, which we have to do maybe next season, District B13. It's a French movie. And
I know
it. Oh, you know it?
I've seen it. Yeah, it's
parkour.
Great.
It's that guy and the guy, David Bell, who's like the creator of like parkour. And it's just that the whole time. They're just like running around. Like, I think Bruce Willis calls him later like a hamster or something like that. But anyways, that guy was great. I just kept calling him Evil Chris Martin.
Evil Chris Martin.
I was wondering if he was the guy from District B13, because he was because he obviously did the parkour thing, but parkour was big during this time. District B13, by the way, anyone listening to watching, a fun action movie on its own right. It's like one of those he has to sneak in there and get someone out stories. If I remember,
I've never heard of this movie. Is this is a foreign film?
It's a French movie, I think.
French movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
And crazy enough, the director of that is the same director as Taken, what we're talking about next week.
Oh,
interesting. So I do want to talk about these exploding computers though. Because it's funny, for all the things that happened, the thing that took me out of this the most is that this super elite group of terrorists thought the most efficient way of getting rid of these hackers is to sneak into their house, apply C4 to the back of their computer, wire it in with a program so that it interacts with the key presses of their keyboard, and then remotely install a virus just before they activate it, as opposed to just shooting them.
There was a lot of that going on. I have a lot of questions about just shooting people, but we'll get to that.
Right? Like why? Like what? It seems like that'd be so difficult to set up for all these people, and it's not like it's not like people would go, oh, well, they blew up, so no one's going to ask questions. People are going to ask more questions about all these buildings blowing up than if someone's, oh man, someone shot that guy, must have robbed his apartment or something. This seemed like the most over elaborate way to get rid of a bunch of dorks that you could ever do. Because also, it's not like they have to be sneaky. It's not like these guys are all military, like tough guys to shoot and kill. You got to be sneaky. Like they're all just sitting in their house. Just go in and kill them.
Yeah, sitting ducks.
I mean, that is a good point. Because then, I mean, the guys are doing triple. So when the guys are going to kill Justin Long, did triple the work. They set up the C4, the thing didn't go off, and then they're like, oh, well, let's just go in and do it ourselves. But they could have just did it themselves to begin with. We could have it could have been a short film. Yeah. Once again, it could have been a 7-minute movie. McClane goes back to Camden or, Rutgers, wherever his daughter is, and gets her, some White Castle and asks for to make up. See, I didn't know that. Maybe that's one of the moments I fell asleep at. God bless me. I'll fall asleep during good movies. So, but I mean, if it's late at night, I'm sleeping. This one? No, I'm joking. No, here's the thing, though. I missed that part. I thought that whatever virus they put in the computer was just blowing it up. Are you saying they literally had to go also put C4 in someone's house, then do the virus? That's a little much, right?
There's
I
mean,
C4
something on the back of the C4 on the back,
and it has to wait till you push a button, right? Yeah,
the delete button, button. And then there's that moment when his tchotchke or his action figure, it falls slow motion, John Woo style, on the delete button, right? Because we all know we always want to avoid that for something from a ledge of our bookshelf to fall right on the delete button of our laptop. Don't you hate it when that happens?
Right, and then blows up my house. Happens once a year. Easy.
Be careful today.
Yeah, that was
the
one
delete button.
That was the one thing in this movie that made me go, "That's not realistic." Come on. The other thing that kind of tickled me that I thought was funny, and before we move on, is so they in the government agency, they're talking about how someone hacked into them and was able to do all this stuff. And they say, "Hey, we need to get everyone in to fix this." And but it's a holiday weekend. Like the government's under attack. Your barbecue can wait.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do? What are you talking about?
It's 4th of July. I've got plans. My in-laws are flying in.
Like, how incompetent is? I love movies like this because government agencies are always just the most incompetent bunch of bozos you're ever going to come across. And these guys.
And another thing, how is it that they know all the hackers to go to? Like, I thought hacking was like more clandestine. Like, yes, we need to get the 300 hackers that are possible around this country and fly them, get them here to DC. I don't know. I thought that was a little much. Like, how do you know who's all specifically a hacker?
Yeah, they can't be that good at being a hacker.
Yeah,
if everyone knows who you are. You're clearly not a very good hacker.
Step 1, be mysterious.
Right.
Yes.
Step 2, be mysterious.
So now John McClane and Justin Long are trying to figure out why people are trying to kill Justin Long. And Justin Long sounds like the most talkative person on your Facebook feed, letting us know that the news is crazy as all the traffic lights turn green. The government says we're under attack and they evacuate everything as things get worse. Now they're turning off the stock market and they cap off the attack with a video of all the presidents cut together like a ransom note saying they're going to fire sale the country, take down everything, and everything must go. Andy, I want to start with you. This is where we start to see who Timothy Olyphant, the guy who's going to be our villain. How do you think he did as a villain in this movie?
First of all, Dreamboat, number one. Yeah. But yeah, great villain. The video was very menacing, and it made me think of how old the movie was because we saw no Barack Obama in there. I kept waiting for a Obama cameo, but check the date, 2007. Barack wasn't president yet. So, but yeah, I thought that was like an interesting way to do it, which at the time was probably a really cool, clever edit. But I think since then they've done that on like the Jimmy Kimmel show and Jimmy Fallon and stuff. So I was like, yeah, okay, I've seen this before. But yeah, I think it did a good job of like, like I said, the hacking. It's hard to make hacking look cool. It's just really fast typing. So to get to meet like our villain and to see what's kind of going on and like this cryptic message, I thought was cool because then it's just kind of like I was always wondering, I'm like, how is Bruce Willis, how is John McClane gonna save the day here?
Yeah, so James, this is where they tell us sort of what's happening. We don't know the full story, but they give us that first taste of what this villain is going to do, and they call it a fire sale because everything must go. And he talks about how you start by taking out the transportation, and then you take out the financials, and you end with the utilities here. As far as a villainous plan, what were you thinking of this? I'll be honest, just to kind of set it up. My thought was, yeah, this sounds terrible, but I don't know what you're going to get out of it. Like, what's the end game here?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Jack. Yeah, and I didn't really get that either. And I know they were after Justin Long's character because, I'm not gonna lie to you. There was something he did hacking wise that him and Kevin Smith allude to later on in the film. But as compared to like the first Die Hard, which is like a self-contained movie, and even Vengeance, which is in New York, all throughout Manhattan and everything, those were like very on the nose. Like, okay, they're here for money. They're here for, specifically to, free some expatriates from their country or something like that, right?
Right.
It's out of the True Terrorist playbook. Timothy, did you say Oliphant?
Oliphant?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oliphant.
I just like the way you pronounce it. I don't know if that's right, but I just like the way you pronounced it. Oliphant.
He's an elephant.
Timothy Oliphant. Like I said, he's got that look. He's a decent looking guy, but he's sneaky. He's up to no good, basically, right? So, and I mean, he's pretty hardcore. But let's not forget about the other bad guy, which to me was more menacing and scary. Is Maggie Q. I mean, she was the one putting in work.
Dude,
for
she just
most
came
of the
up
movie.
and just started shooting people.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden,
like, hey, you can't park your helicopter here. She's like, boom. I'm like,
yeah,
he's
exactly.
just trying to do his job,
right? But then you find out not only is she a hacker, she knows kung fu or or martial arts, and I mean she's just like a real badass. So, but yeah, once again for the hackers, I guess they just wanted to create chaos. I guess, but it doesn't seem so specified that you can attach to. All you know is that Bruce Willis needs to save this hacker from being killed. That's really all I know at that point.
I'm kind of in the same boat. Yeah, I just kind of was like, okay, there seems like some hacking stuff going on. I don't really know what they want, but I know John McClane's going to get in there somehow.
Or why they want it, right?
But I was kind of like,
so the why.
But I kind of was like, who cares?
Yeah,
right.
Let's just see it. Let's see what happens.
Throughout this, and more of it will come into play, but throughout this, I kept thinking like, okay, so you shut down traffic. That sucks. But wouldn't everyone just stay home and stay off of traffic for a little bit? And then I remember how 2020 went. And I learned that, it would be a total madhouse if traffic went down and no one would get out of anyone's way. Timothy Oliphant, by the way, voice, great voice.
Yeah,
it has a good menacing voice too.
The very opposite of Justin Long's kind of squeaky voice.
Right.
I love when Justin Long says he's hungry and wants Arby's.
Yeah.
I just thought that was like a perfect way to describe his character.
I wonder how much of the lines he was greasing, like what was in the script and what wasn't, because he has such great comedic timing in the script.
Yeah. He's the perfect opposite of John McClane. This entire movie.
Perfect partner, like twofer in a film where you always want to put like opposites together. It's perfect. Because like I said, McClane's this old school grizzled tough guy, and Justin Long is Justin Long. It's perfect.
And they play off each other very well. The looks that Bruce Willis gives Justin Long throughout the movie is just perfect. Like, this guy. Long, to your point, James, Long eventually admits he used to help put this program together, though unknowingly, but does know the girl's voice on the police scanner. So John McClane picks a fight with a helicopter, and using a fire hydrant, a tunnel, and his car, he's able to actually take out the helicopter. Meanwhile, the bad guys sneak into the evacuated NDA building, and the bad guy girl gets in a fake FBI helicopter of her own, while the White House sends the classic other agency guys to help run the operation for the good guys, but as always, just end up getting in the way. So, Andy, I heard you. Helicopter fight scene. He launches a car at the helicopter. God. Again, takeout, is this realistic? This was awesome, wasn't it?
This scene is my favorite. And there's another one that's similar to this later on, but this one just so good. For one, he's in the police car, I think at the time, right? And he's muttering to himself, "Oh, John, you really did it this time. They say come out of retirement, now you got to do." And I just love that. I just love him talking to himself. And then you're like, what is he gonna do? And then the car flies up, hits the helicopter, and then he says, I was all out of bullets.
Yes, yeah, he said that.
It's so good.
I was out of
It's so
bullets.
good.
I was out of
Man.
bullets.
I was out of bullets.
It's like, also I love that part where they were still in the tunnel and like the one car like is flipping through the air and they
Yes.
duck,
Yeah.
but the two other cars are side by side, so it hits the other
That's
cars.
an iconic scene or shot.
Yeah,
from the trailer and everything.
That whole
too. That's a
part, I
great
felt like
scene.
I felt
whole
like, sorry to
sequence.
interrupt. I felt like that was like, that could have been like the end scene of most action films. Like to have that like pretty front loaded was pretty awesome, because you're kind of like, they're gonna like top that. A car just flew and hit a helicopter. They're gonna top that. Yeah. They are.
And boy, howdy do they. James, I want to go back to the whole idea of echoes from old movies, because there's a couple of those here. The thing Andy talked about where he's like, "Oh, you really did it now, John," really reminds me of that first Die Hard where he's in the vent saying,
in the air vent.
Come out and come out for the holidays, have a few laughs." But
Have a good
also
time.
the two guys
So
that
good.
come from the other agency and get in the way, also from the first movie, the FBI guys that show up halfway through Die Hard 1. It's kind of more of these echoes and things like that. Are you a fan of the echo of old movies?
No, I am. And like I said, I think a movie like this, because I mean, we're looking in hindsight. I think they did a 5th installment shortly after this one, right?
I didn't
Because
see
this
it,
one was so good. I didn't see that one either.
Yeah.
And I know it got kind of hammered by the
Yeah.
critics and stuff like that. But before this version, it had been years since the 3rd one. So this was like a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we haven't seen a sequel to this franchise in, I don't know, 10 plus years or so. So at that point, first of all, it's like IP. You have to, it'd be like if they come out with another Iron Man movie 5 years from now, right? We want all the great liners. We want RDJ to come back. Shout out to RDJ again. I feel like we do that. I do that every other episode. But
Crush alert.
Yeah. Oh,
Fair.
please. I'm holding back.
It's fair. It's fair.
It's fair. But you have to feed the people the red meat. You have to. I mean, that's what people are coming there for. At least half the audiences. If we go, we're bringing our girlfriends or wives with us. There's a chance they may or may not have even seen the other ones, right? So, or we made them watch the old ones leading up to this, right? That beauty. Like, oh, you haven't seen this series? Okay, we need to watch all these. But it's good. And I just want to say there's another part that's distinct to me. I'll be honest, it's probably one of my favorite parts of the movie is when Justin Long is speaking to, Diana or Siri or whatever that thing is in the car.
Oh, yeah.
And he's negotiating with her to turn the car on. I think this happens shortly after the helicopter scene.
It happens in a little bit, yeah.
Oh, it does. Okay, so I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, we'll talk about that. But that's probably my favorite scene in the movie. Perfect John McClane looking at this little snobs kid and being like, oh my god, and then like also being impressed with him at the same time.
My dad.
Yeah.
The fact that it works is great. I guess I want to wrap up this last part by saying I think what really was powerful for me about this scene in the tunnel and them launching the helicopters, it kind of sets the stage of this bad guy can control everything. But John McClane is literally going to throw everything he has at every single situation that gets put in front of him. He's not going to hold back. He's not going to worry about collateral damage. He is there to just wreak havoc. And it's kind of this unstoppable force, immovable object thing of these two things going at each other, and neither of them is going to hold back. And to me, that set the stage in a lot of ways for the action of this movie, because as we see throughout this movie, there is no... Basically, it's like he tries to take out ants with a sledgehammer. You know what I mean? Like he's just given everything he has at every single situation, which makes it fun. But the bad guys take over the news and they blow up a fake White House. So the boys steal a car by pretending they're having heart attacks and head to West Virginia. They get to the utilities building to do what they're best at, and that's making dated references and fighting, and they're all out of references. The bad guy girl and John McClane duke it out, and she wins at first. Then McClane drives through the longest office ever built and sends her down an elevator. They use camera phones to figure out who the bad guy is, and apparently he tried to warn the USA this could happen, and we didn't listen, so he decided to show him. Timothy tries to blow them up before turning the power off of the west side of the country. So, James, this is that scene you're talking about, that scene where they trick. What were those called? Those used to be really popular. Do they still have those in cars anymore? the people that talk to you?
I don't know if they still do. They
Is it
might.
OnStar? Is it
OnStar. Maybe
I
it's
feel
an
like they got them
OnStar
for like
thing.
Tesla.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But not for us regular people.
Yeah, not us regular folk.
Andy, as we're talking about this, this is another part that kind of got me going. the shooting cars did not get me to pull the "this isn't realistic" button lever, but they drove all the way to West Virginia. That's like an 8-hour drive from New York, and I was thinking, poor John McClane. By the way, his part in the movie started at 3 a.m. So he'd already probably been up all night.
Yeah.
Then he was up all day. Now driving 8 hours to West Virginia. At no point does he ever take a break. It seems like he's up for like 4 days over the course of this movie.
Yeah.
And has to drive to West Virginia. For some reason that got me.
And with Justin Long this whole time, because later when Justin Long has the idea of like, can't we just road trip it? And Bruce Willis decides to drive the helicopter later. And I think that's a result of this. He's like, I don't want to do another road trip with this pipsqueak. But I got to talk about that scene with Maggie Q in that elevator shaft. It's just so cool. I mean, just like, I think like we talked about in the beginning, they just were just like, let's just see what we can do here. Hey, I have this idea of like, I don't know, she falls down an elevator shaft and then pulls him back in, and then there's explosions everywhere. Yeah, let's do this. And it's just great. Like, just, we already talked about how much of a badass she was. I was surprised she died as quickly as she did. I thought she was going to be there until the end. And then Bruce Willis says like an iconic line, "Enough of this kung fu shit."
Yeah, just shoots her between the eyes or something, because he can't. And it's funny you say, I thought with that whole elevator shaft scene, it reminded me of like a horror movie trope. Like, she just wouldn't die. I mean, he rammed a SUV. He was pushing at least 70 miles an hour, and he still couldn't kill her. No, they didn't crush her legs, nothing. And she just wouldn't die. Gun even falls in next to her at the very end. But, he just grabs the elevator rope just in time as she falls to her demise, and you show her face. What a badass. I was shocked, though, as you said, Andy, that they would get rid of her that quick. But, like I said, I think Len Wiseman was like, he's like, what's the budget of this film? And they're like, well, it could be 50 million, or it could go all the way up to 150 million. He says, hold my beer. We're going 150, because I mean, he's throwing the kitchen sink just in case someone decides that they've had, just in case someone figures out that they left the gas on at the stove and they can't see the whole film. They feel like
gas. So speaking of gas, I mean, as they kill Maggie Q, I mean, what a way to really. Why would you rile up Timothy Olyphant like that? You see, this guy's dangerous. He's like, "Oh yeah, your girl's dead. That's right. Suck it, buddy." And he's like, "Oh yeah. Here comes some gas."
That's the beauty of John McClane, though. He doesn't care. He wants the fight. And like I said a second ago, he could have just gone back in there with his gun and shot her. But no, he's like, I'm going to literally ram an SUV down her throat and then shove her down an elevator shaft and then drop the car on top of her.
Doesn't he say she has an SUV shoved up her ass? I think that's what he says.
I think he does say that.
Yeah,
but I don't think he could have shot her. I honestly don't. I think for him, he would have tried to come point blank, and she would have dislodged the gun and ripped his throat out or something like that. So he knew his only chance was to ram, like I said, a 2-ton vehicle into her, and still didn't do that.
Her and evil Chris Martin, you can't just shoot them because they're just like indestructible humans.
Well, that was something I noticed too that I don't think I've seen in movies is you actually saw him like punch her and beat her up. And there's other movies where guys and girls fight, but I noticed they always cut away from the guy actually hitting them. But this one pulled no punches. He like when they fought, they really fought like they were going at it.
You mentioned that. It's funny you mentioned that, Jack. I noticed that first. Remember in the first 10 seconds of them fighting, they would cut away from when he was punching her, but at a certain point, they just let the camera fly and you're seeing everything. It's funny you mentioned that. I was thinking the same thing.
Because even in movies, like I know the original Deadpool, they had a female villain and they got into a fight. But it would always like I said, kind of cut so you don't see them actually like connect. But this one, they were just like, boom.
Well, it's weird too because you obviously like are like, you don't want to hit a girl, I suppose. But when she's coming at you like a lunatic, Bruce Willis has got to do something, because later you see the guys that hit his daughter, and you're like, oh, but like this, you're kind of like, get her, McClane.
Well,
he's like, I don't want to punch her, so I'm gonna run her over with an SUV and shove her down an elevator shaft and drop an SUV on her, just to make sure. And then it blows up, by the way, on her. The SUV blows up.
I was hoping she would come back from that still, like just kind of charred, but still like has the gun in her hand,
like the Terminator.
Yeah.
Yes.
So much as you alluded to, Andy, McClane and Long get on a helicopter and guest fly their way to Warlock's house.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith has a command center, and they find out something weird is going on at the Social Security Administration, and it's not disappearing benefits. It's something serious. The bad guys find McClane's daughter, and she's stuck in an elevator, so she gets taken hostage, and they kill the remaining programmers they don't need. This is, as we always talk about, that moment that all hope is lost kind of moment. The bad guys got the utilities, they've got all the money, they've got the daughter. But Andy, at this point, they mentioned the Social Security. I couldn't help but feel like they had a bingo card with all the government agencies on it, and they were trying to see how many they could name drop before the end of this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Like we talked about before, I don't know why the thing made me laugh where they take the helicopter to go to Warlocks. And I think it was exactly, I didn't think about it till you alluded to it, but it's like they had just went on this long road trip. And then like Bruce Willis, I think, was just like, you know what? I can't be in the car with this kid this much longer. Hey kid, we're going to take the helicopter. Cause as you see, John McClane doesn't really know how to drive a helicopter, kind of does. But I think one of the best cameos, is Kevin Smith as the Warlock. What's his real name though? Freddie?
Fred something, yeah.
He lives in the basement with his mom.
His mom.
He calls it his command center. And Bruce Willis is like, command center? This is a basement. But I thought it was a good move too, because he mentions the CB radio. And it's just like, I love like moments in film where you're kind of like, why did they bring that up? And you're like, maybe that's going to be something later. And I think a good foreshadowing event. But the one thing I do have a problem with in this movie is we're in the elevator with the daughter. Why can't Bruce Willis or John McClane? Why can't John McClane just call his daughter? He's seeing all this go down. Can't he just call her and be like, she picks up and goes, hey, honey, hang up on that guy.
That's true.
I'm just, the whole time I was just like, just call her.
I probably would have noticed that if I wasn't too busy thinking about how ripe those guys must have been smelling on day 4 of all this fighting and action without any stop. Those guys stunk. I bet they came in that house, and I bet Warlock was like, dude, guys, come on. What is this?
And if Warlock's saying that.
Yeah, I was going to say, the guy named Warlock living in his basement.
To be fair, Warlock looked like he had his hygiene taken care of.
Yeah,
he did. He did. He looked just a little too seasoned to be living in the basement. Maybe because it's Kevin Smith. He's got the beard. I mean, but you buy it. But it's like, damn, what decisions? I mean, it's supposed to, I don't know, man. It's and shout out to a Tusk reference. I didn't realize all 3 of these people in the scene worked together in separate films after this. But there's a movie that Justin Long did with Kevin Smith called Tusk. I can't recommend it. It's a very disturbing movie. Yeah, but it's one you will never forget.
It looks gross.
Yeah, I can't recommend it. But yeah, I cannot recommend it. But it's just funny. And I think Bruce Willis worked with Kevin Smith. He directed another movie of his called Cop Out or something a few years later. So
that's right. Yeah,
was it Cop Out? Yeah, it was with Tracy Morgan. Yeah, you heard. Yeah, I always thought about that as I watched this scene. Like, they probably had such a great time in this, but afterwards, it wasn't so rosy afterwards.
Well, we get to the end here. It's revealed that all of America's financial data is downloaded as a backup to one place, and that's where everyone's headed. The final showdown starts happening and all sorts of killing begins. A guy falls into a super cold paper shredder. John McClane jacks a large truck to chase down Timothy. And then the most epic scene in the history of cinema when they send a jet after McClane. They destroy a lot of freeway, but it was all in good fun, especially when he rides a crashing jet's tail to safety while surfing down to the ground. The bad guys and the good guys all get together in a warehouse and fight it out. John says the magic words yippee-ki-yay and then shoots through himself to kill the bad guy, and the government shows up to save them, finding him by tracking him because this time it's okay for them to spy on you. Happy ending, no lessons learned. So this is what really this is what got me, and this was the biggest negative I had on this villain. Is it turns out he's after just money. He wants the money. He wants the government to pay him the money. And this was another echo, by the way, because every other terrorist in all the other movies, it always comes down to money. In all the other Die Hard, it always comes down to money, which is cool. But I was thinking, Timothy Olyphant, I can't remember what his character's name, Thomas Gabriel. He had access. He could have given himself as much money as he wanted. He didn't need to be paid. So that to me felt like, I don't really get what your point was here. That's the end of the movie. James, we'll have you start. We wrap it all up. How do you feel these last scenes went?
Yeah, I mean, they went. I mean, you said McClane is riding a jet, like a jet ski,
surfing it. Yeah,
yeah, he's surfing
on a jet. The John McClane
longboard surfing a jet. Period.
Yes. And do you think he can't do this? He's John McClane.
I loved it so much.
Well, like I said, that's just so fascinating about this one compared to the others, which are, everyone can't do what he does in the first Die Hard or the first three, but they're still somewhat rooted in some reality. Like you can be like, oh yeah, that's possible. This one, Lynn Wiseman's like, yeah, we've seen that before. We're gonna turn you into like a superhero. So he's like I said, he's defying like not even a jet can kill him. Explosives can't kill McClane. His ex-wife can't kill him.
And I think it's a great commercial for that truck. That truck is shot up by missiles and bullets and explosions and stuff just on the street, and it keeps going. I'm just like, this truck is. I'm buying one of those. Yeah, unstoppable.
I love how too. He's getting shot at with missiles and machine guns, and he's like, "Is that all you got?" He just keeps on going. I don't know where he was going at this point. He's going up this long ramp. Where is he trying to go? But I don't care how ridiculous it is. I loved it. I thought that was fantastic. I was all on board with it.
There is one great line. I got to give Justin Long this one when they find Justin Long and his tufts, Timothy Olyphant's tufts, which going back really quick,
tufts,
the tough guys, going back, like you said, Timothy Olyphant, Thomas Gabriel didn't need any of these guys. He could have just hacked into the system, got money himself. But anyway, he's got all these guys. So they catch Justin Long, and the guy goes, "We got a problem." And Justin Long says, "Actually, no problem. I just got off on the wrong floor." I don't know
why. Hold on. And you said another thing too. I got to go back really quick to the Maggie Q thing. Justin Long's so funny because when she ties him, he's like, "I'm a righty. I mean it. I'm really a righty," and then she unties him. "See, righty. I'm a righty." And I was like, it's just so wistfully banter. And the thing that trips me off at the end, and I'm like, okay, he's doing the trope we see in all movies. The guy points a gun at him and he's like, okay, I'll do it. And then he keeps saying like what he won't do, or he doesn't do something. The gun keeps getting pointed at him at different times and make him go a step further to press the right buttons. And I just think it's funny. And at one point they're going to shoot his kneecap, which that's too gruesome, but eventually he does get shot in the leg, right? Mm-hmm. After all that back and forth, with Timothy Elephant. And I don't know. Like I said, you check your brain at the door at this movie. I mean, even at one point, Gennaro hyphen McClane, his daughter says like, "Oh, does Justin Long think I'm hot, or does he like me?" And I was like, really? Okay, all right. I mean,
there was I didn't like the daughter. Like, she's so mean to him at the not so mean, but she's mean to him at the beginning. She's like, if I want to talk to you, I'll reach out to you. Yeah. And then after she gets saved, she's like, I knew you'd come for me, you brat.
And she said her name today was McClane.
Today, yeah.
Just so happens on the day your dad is saving your life.
What a jerk. What a selfish jerk.
And I was kind of curious about that. Like we talked about earlier, there were so many times you could just shoot the person, but Thomas Gabriel, why didn't he just shoot her? Like, what did he need her for?
A bargaining chip, right? Didn't McClane sell that to him because he's really afraid of McClane and his Neanderthal protections or something?
Yeah, I just felt like he probably could have just got rid of her.
At the end of the movie, they definitely kept people around longer than they needed to.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that was something I wasn't super happy with. Is Thomas Gabriel was kind of a wimp. He's kind of a punk. Like the way he got taken out. Like, it's kind of cool that John McClane was so tough he shot through himself. But that was cool. It. That was it for Timothy Olyphant. I mean, when you look at the way other guys died,
the one that Bruce Willis calls the hamster. He's like, stay still, you goddamn hamster, moving around like Spider-Man. And then he falls through that. What was that? Like,
I call it the paper shredder. I don't know why
you said a cold paper shredder. You called it a cold paper shredder.
That guy.
What else would it be? Why would you have that there with like no guardrails above it?
A lot of documents.
It's just like the water well in 300. Right?
Yeah,
there's no.
You guys notice you have this really cold, dangerous, spiky paper shredder here? Yeah, it's been here. It was here when we moved in, so we just figured.
We're going to replace it eventually. We haven't gotten around to it. But every good action movie, you need to have the poetic death of the villain, right? Mm-hmm. Like in the first Die Hard, we keep referencing, he didn't just kill Hans Gruber. He didn't just shoot him. He fell off the top of Nakatomi Tower all the way. Like, you have something like that happen. You got to have that thing that's like, this is the big thing. Like Terminator 2, the T-1000 goes into the lava pit. Like, you have to have some big thing where this was like, oh, he got shot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
It wasn't iconic. I mean, the Maggie Q death was more like thrilling, right? But that happens, like I said, I mean, probably halfway into the film. But that's a good point with the other one. I can't remember what happened with the guy in Die Hard with a Vengeance, but I'm sure it was memorable because this dude was a great bad guy, a great foil.
Mm-hmm. If I remember right, he was in a helicopter and John McClane shot a power line or something and it hit him. Something like that.
Okay.
Something like that happened.
Yeah. He was getting away, right? At that point or something.
Yeah. Some along those lines. I can't remember exactly, but you need something big. Like he was just shot at the end of the day. He just got shot and that was it.
And maybe in the shoulder. I mean, maybe it's just right above the shoulder. For all we know, is a flesh wound.
Yeah, like he should have been like buried in a pile of computer equipment or something. I don't know.
Or like, shoved like a USB drive down his throat.
Something that makes him like,
put a mouse up his butt.
Yeah, I was about to say
computer mouse.
Not computer mouse.
It's a real
different film.
The other guy was Gerbil. You're a mouse.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Like John McClane, how come every time you arrest someone, we find him with a rodent up there?
Oh my god.
It's like a thing he does. To all of them. So I said, I don't know if you guys have any final thoughts on this, but I thought this was just a really fun movie. Again, check your brain at the door and just go along for the ride. And if you do that, I think this is just a great, fun movie.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, because it's a daddy-daughter kind of movie, but it's definitely like, this is a daddy-son movie. This is a movie you go with your dad. You guys haven't talked in a while. Hey, Dad, let's go watch the John McClane movie. You're just going to see explosions. The plot is, I couldn't even tell you what it was, but I know there was a lot of cool stunts and explosions. And I love the last thing he says at the end. Bruce Willis just goes, hospital. So that's the end. And then the QCCR. And I'm like, perfect.
I was going to say, by the way, he says hospital. Yeah, you're in an ambulance. That's where they go.
They're not about to take you to In and Out.
Yeah. Like, can you take me back to my place? No, it's an ambulance. That's what we do.
Good.
Oh, and one more final thing, James, before you get to your point. I like how at the end he talks to Justin Long and he's like, how you doing? And I was thinking Justin Long's probably like, well, I have to deal with the horrible night terrors I'm going to have for the rest of my life after this weekend and murdering someone for the first time in my life. But yeah, I'm doing okay other than that.
Besides that,
He seemed to handle murdering someone and going on this crazy thrill ride pretty well.
he did.
But James, any final thoughts before we get to our Kevin Bacon?
Yeah, no, like I said, once again, it's a check your brain at the door, as you said. And the central relationship, if you didn't know better, like I said, in the first 5 minutes, you think, oh, father-daughter film. But really, the central relationship is between Bruce Willis and Justin Long's character. Like I said, it's almost like he's not a son to him, but yeah, I mean, that's the central relationship in this movie. And him and his daughter may arc a bit, but I mean, it's basically in the beginning and the end when she gets kidnapped. But other than that, yeah, fun movie. One of those great Bruce Willis films.
I feel like if a son was kidnapped, we'd all be like, well, he's on his own, man. Just deal with
good
it.
luck.
Yeah.
Walk it off, kid.
Is he above 18? All right.
Yeah, it's
Well,
not my problem.
Yeah, not my problem. I put in my work already.
Yeah, not my legal obligation.
Right.
Let's get to the Kevin Bacon. Andy, do we have a Kevin Bacon for this one?
Oh yeah, we got Bruce Willis, who's in this movie. I don't know if you remember. He played John McClane. He was in a movie called 12 Monkeys, which earned Academy Award nominee Brad Pitt in 12 Monkeys. Brad Pitt was also in a movie with Kevin Bacon called Sleepers.
Wow. I didn't see that coming.
Wasn't Bruce Willis in a movie with Kevin Bacon? Was that like Apollo 13, or wasn't he in like a movie where I don't know?
Probably. That was
13.
But you wanted to go through Sleepers.
He did.
Yeah, I would love to see Bruce Willis and Kevin Bacon in like a buddy cop movie or something where they're like old, like grizzled, like.
I feel like it would be Bruce Willis versus Kevin Bacon if they were. Yeah,
Kevin Bacon has such an energy in certain movies. I don't see those two together, right? But that could be. Yeah, maybe they're foils to each other.
Yeah.
But because who's the funny man in this one? It had to be Bruce Willis, right? Yeah. Kevin Bacon's like a serious dude.
Yeah. Except for Footloose.
I think he's better as a villain. I just like Kevin Bacon as a villain. I think
he's a great villain.
Yeah,
he plays a great villain.
So speaking of great villains, 2008, Andy, you kind of gave it away a little bit ago, but our next movie, what are we doing? Who's the villain? I don't know. I'm trying to segue.
Well,
here.
It's interesting because we just did a movie about a father saving his daughter. So I said, hey, let's do it again. Let's check out Taken.
Taken is such a good movie. I feel like that was a movie that took everyone by surprise with how good it was, and really reignited Liam Neeson's career. And he's like an action star because of that movie.
And now people are naming their children after Liam Neeson.
Yes, they are. That a boy. That's my namesake, my son's namesake. That's why I love you picked this film. I didn't name it after Liam Neeson, but
it was the guy from Oasis, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Then you see the pictures of the guy from Oasis, Liam Neeson, Liam Hemsworth, in my son's room. But yes, I love the name Liam and
the Holy Trinity of Liams.
The Trinity of Liams, right? But yes, as you said, this movie, you talk about a movie to get straight to the point and doesn't waste anyone's time. I mean, it's probably less than an hour and a half, I feel like. So, great pick. And of course, we'll talk about it more in the next episode.
Yeah. But how about 2009, James? What are we watching for the 2009 episode in 2 weeks?
Well, like I said, you pick these iconic people from the past and the present. You've got Bruce Willis. He picked, Andy picked Liam Neeson. I said, hold my beer. And I picked Nicolas Cage. I was trying to think if he had a middle name, but
Nicholas, by God,
I think it's Liam.
Yeah, Nicholas Liam Cage.
Why is that funny to me?
I know. All I got to say, I don't even want to tell you what this movie's about. Just watch it.
I'm not going to watch the trailer or anything. I'm just going to go in.
Just watch the film and stick with it. It's Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans. Yeah, I think that. Yeah,
I can't wait.
Bad Lieutenant : Port of Call, New Orleans.
Nice.
So it's a remake, I believe, from like the 70s with Harvey Keitel. It's about a cop that is unhinged
And that's
That's
okay.
all I gotta
Just
say.
stop right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to know anything.
If Nicolas Cage is in it, unhinged is implied.
Yeah, you don't even need the word in there, right?
Yeah.
You're like, and what are you telling me that I don't expect?
Right. It's like saying Will Ferrell's in it. It's a comedy. Well, yeah, I know.
Well, look, let me just put it to you like this. In this movie, Nick Cage goes full Nick Cage. I can't say that enough. And that's all you got to know.
I'm so excited for that one.
Yeah.
So that leaves 2010 to me.
Wow.
And we're going to do things. We're going to do a different style movie, I think, here. And I am going to go with 2010's Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So,
Classic.
yeah,
Thank
Classic
God.
film.
thank God. What?
You've redeemed yourself,
No,
Jack,
because-
from Empire Records. Let me just say that.
I'm just saying because we have Die Hard and Taken, and I'm assuming Nick Cage is going to be insane. So these three like action-packed, crazy movies. So
I was thinking there's some cartoon in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, right? Or am I can't
I don't think
remember.
I've seen it.
Oh, you haven't seen it? I
don't
think it's
think
based
so.
off a comic book.
It is based off a comic book, but I wanted to. I don't know. I thought it'd be fun.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
It's a great film.
It'll
Edgar
be fun.
Wright, man. Edgar Wright directed.
So that does it for us. Before we go, though, Andy Rossi, where can the world find you online?
The world can find me at just Andy Rossi.
And James Shippey.
The universe can find me at JShippy2 on Twitter and at JEShippy2 on Instagram.
And you can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. That does it for us this week. Make sure to tune in next week when we review Taken. Watch Taken yourself. That way you get what we're talking about. But we'll post that next week. And until next time, I don't know. Have a good weekend.